I'm Elise Carter. I was 31 years old the day my entire world collapsed and rebuilt itself from the ashes. I stood at the counter inside the federal building downtown, my fingers curled around $12 in crumpled bills and a pale pink eviction notice stamped with yesterday's date. My stomach was hollow, my shoes worn thin, but my posture was straight. Pride, the only currency I had left. All I needed was a passport stamp so I could board a cargo ship to Portugal and take a janitor job at a seaside hotel. Anything to disappear. The clerk barely glanced up as she scrolled through my documents. Then she stopped. Her eyes lifted to mine, wide and stunned, and in a voice lower than a whisper, but louder than any scream I'd ever heard, she said, "You can't leave." My breath hitched. Before I could ask why, the overhead lights flickered violently, then erupted into a pulsing, silent red strobe. Two armed guards materialized at my sides, hands resting on their holsters like they'd been waiting for this moment. The clerk's hands trembled as she slid a screen toward me. "This social security number. It belongs to a child who died in 1991. Dead." The word echoed in my skull. I was standing right there, alive, breathing, desperate. But before I could argue, the elevator behind me dinged softly. The doors slid open. A man in a perfectly tailored black suit stepped out, walking through the armed cordon like it was mist. He didn't look at the guards. He looked at me, his gaze sharp, certain, terrifying. He stopped 2 feet away. And with a quiet authority that froze my blood, he said 3 words that erased every lie I'd ever been told. "Welcome back, Julianne. If your whole life, the name you answered to, the home you hated, the shame you wore like skin, was built on a deception so complete it rewrote your DNA, would you run from the truth? Or would you stay and burn the lies down?" I didn't end up handcuffed in a holding cell. I wasn't dragged to a steel table bolted to concrete. Instead, the man, who introduced himself only as Agent Reeves, led me down a quiet corridor lined with sound-dampening panels into an office that smelled of rich coffee, aged leather, and quiet power. He didn't read me my rights. He didn't treat me like a suspect. He poured me a glass of ice water and set it gently on a polished mahogany desk, the cubes clinking like fragile bones. "Drink," he said. "You're in shock." My hands shook so badly the ice rattled against the rim. I was 31 years old. For the past 14 years, I'd scrubbed bathroom floors at midnight, served lukewarm coffee at truck stops, and slept in shelters when the rent ran out. I believed I was Elise Carter, the unwanted stepdaughter of Sheriff Dale Maddox, a man who called me a mistake, a burden, and lucky to be fed. I thought I was nothing. Reeves slid a manila folder across the desk. He didn't open it immediately. He just rested his hand on the cover as if giving me time to brace. "We've been looking for you for 30 years, Julianne," he said softly. Then he flipped it open. Inside wasn't a criminal record or a mugshot. It was a digital age progression rendering of a young woman, her eyes bright, her posture strong, her face unburdened by survival. She had my jawline, my nose, my exact shade of hazel eyes, but she didn't look exhausted. She looked loved. "That's what you would have looked like," Reeves said, "if you hadn't been taken." My chest tightened like a vice. "Your real name is Julianne Whitmore. Your family founded Whitmore Energy, one of the largest independent oil and gas companies in Texas. They've spent every year since 1991 searching for you. They would trade every well, every pipeline, every dollar they own, just to hold you again." Kidnapped. The word should have shattered me. Instead, it unlocked something deep inside. A lifetime of confusion suddenly aligning into cruel, crystal-clear focus. Everything made sense now. Sheriff Dale Maddox, The man I'd called Dad until I was 18 hadn't resented me because I was difficult or ungrateful. He'd resented me because I was living proof of a crime. I remembered sleeping on a cot in the damp laundry room while his biological daughter, Lila, lounged in a sun-drenched master suite with walk-in closets and fairy lights. I remembered him sneering, "Steaks for people who earn their keep," while I ate cold beans from a can in the garage. I thought his cruelty meant I was worthless. But now I saw it. He needed me small. He needed me ashamed. He needed me so desperate for scraps that I'd never ask for my birth certificate, never question why my school photos vanished after 3rd grade, never wonder why my social security card felt flimsy in my wallet. Tears streamed down my face, not from fear, but from the overwhelming relief of knowing I wasn't broken, I was stolen. Reeves pushed a sleek black phone across the desk. "Your parents are on a private jet right now. They'll land at the executive airport in 20 minutes. You're safe here, Julianne. This is federal territory. No one can touch you." I stared at that phone like it was a bridge across 30 years of darkness. For the first time, the floor beneath me felt solid. I wasn't Elise the evictee, the burden, the mistake. I was Julianne Whitmore, and I was going home. I reached for the phone, my finger hovering over the screen, ready to say the words I'd whispered to myself in the dark for years. "It's me. I'm alive. That was my mistake. I let my guard down. I let myself believe the fight was over." The door didn't just open, it exploded inward with a crash that echoed off the marble walls. 2 uniformed deputies charged in, boots slamming, hands on their weapons. And behind them, striding in like he owned the very air in the room, was Dale. He wasn't wearing the grease-stained flannel I remembered. He was in full sheriff's dress uniform, badge gleaming, boots polished, face a mask of cold authority. His eyes didn't flicker toward Reeves. They locked onto me with a stare so dead it felt like a tomb closing. "Step away from the suspect," he barked, voice sharp as a blade. Reeves rose slowly, placing himself between me and the deputies like a human shield. "This is a federal investigation, Sheriff. You have zero jurisdiction here." Dale didn't blink. He slapped a folded sheet of paper onto the mahogany desk with a slap that made the ice water tremble. "Warrant. Signed by County Judge Miller 10 minutes ago. Grand larceny. Felony charges." He pointed a finger at me, the same finger that had poked my chest 1,000 times while calling me lazy. "That woman stole $50,000 worth of diamond jewelry from my wife's bedroom this morning before fleeing the county." "That's a lie," I screamed, shock cracking my voice. "I haven't been near your house in years." "Save it for the judge," Dale sneered. He nodded to his deputies. "Cuff her." One of them grabbed my arm and twisted it behind my back with brutal force. My shoulder popped. A white-hot burst of pain that blurred my vision. I cried out. Reeves moved instantly, his hand drifting toward his jacket, but Dale stepped chest to chest with him, voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "Careful, Agent. This is a state-level felony with exigent circumstances. Unless you want obstruction of justice on your permanent record, you'll step aside." Reeves hesitated. I saw the calculation in his eyes. He knew the law, and Dale knew he knew it. That was the trap. The cold steel of the handcuffs bit into my wrists. The click of the lock sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. "You said I was safe," I pleaded, looking at Reeves through tears. "Please don't let him take me." Dale leaned in, his breath hot against my ear, his voice a hiss only I could hear. "I told you never to dig. I told you to leave it alone. Now you're going to die in a holding cell, Elise. You'll hang yourself with a bedsheet before your rich parents even touch the tarmac." My blood turned to ice. He wasn't taking me to jail to book me. He was taking me to jail to erase me. They half-dragged, half-marched me into the hallway, my boots skidding on the polished linoleum. Dale's grip on my bicep bruising familiar, yanked me violently back through time. Suddenly, the federal corridor dissolved. I was 18 again, standing on the rain-soaked porch of the only home I'd ever known, clutching a garbage bag stuffed with my clothes. Inside, through the bay window, I could see them. Dale and Lila, seated at the dining table, slicing into thick, bleeding steaks. Warm yellow light from the chandelier glinted off crystal glasses. I'd just finished a sandwich made from the heel of a stale loaf, because Dale said, "Steak is for contributors." I remembered knocking on the glass, begging to come back in just for the night. He'd open the door, looming over me like a storm cloud. "You should be on your knees thanking me," he'd said, voice dripping with self-righteous poison. "I kept a roof over your head for 10 years. I fed you. I clothed you. And you weren't even my blood. Do you know how expensive it is to keep a mistake?" And I had. God help me, I had fallen to my knees on that wet concrete and thanked him for the scraps. For 14 years, I carried that debt like a chain around my neck, believing I owed the world an apology just for existing. But now, in this hallway, the truth hit me like lightning. It wasn't charity. It was camouflage. He hadn't been raising a stepdaughter. He'd been hiding a witness. Every time he made me feel small, every time he told me I was lucky to have a roof, he was grooming me, training me to be grateful for my own prison. He needed me broken so I wouldn't ask questions. He needed me desperate so I wouldn't look up my own birth records. He wasn't my savior. He was my warden. And that realization didn't bring fear. It incinerated fear. It birthed something hotter, sharper. Rage. Pure, clarifying rage. He thought he was dragging Elise, the scared, obedient girl. But Elise was gone. I planted my feet. I stopped resisting, and instead went completely limp, dropping my entire body weight like dead cargo. It's a trick you learn moving furniture alone. Dead weight is impossible to carry. The sudden drop caught the deputies off guard. We jerked to a halt 10 feet from the elevator bank. "Get up!" Dale snarled, yanking my arm. "Stop making a scene." I didn't get up. Slowly, I straightened my spine, pulling against the cuffs until the chain was taut. I turned my head and looked straight into Dale's eyes. For the first time in my life, I didn't flinch. I didn't lower my gaze. I let him see the truth. The victim was gone. The witness was awake, and she was about to burn his world to the ground. "Check the timestamp!" My scream tore through the lobby, echoing off marble and steel like a gunshot. It wasn't a plea. It was a command. The deputies froze for a split second, just long enough. Reeves was already sprinting toward us, reaching for his radio. Dale kicked my leg hard. "Shut her up! Get her in the elevator!" But it was too late. Reeves threw his body against the closing elevator doors, forcing them back open with a screech of metal. 2 Federal Protective Service officers materialized from the security checkpoint, hands on their weapons, blocking Dale's path. "Hold it!" Reeves barked, his voice no longer soothing but sharp with federal command. "Nobody moves. This is obstruction of justice." Dale's face twisted. "I'm a sheriff. I'm executing a lawful arrest." "Let me see the warrant," Reeves demanded, holding out his hand. Not asking, commanding. Dale clutched the paper for a heartbeat, like a gambler hiding a losing hand. Then, with 3 federal guns trained on him, he shoved the crumpled sheet forward. "Read it and weep, Agent. Grand larceny. Signed by Judge Miller this morning." Reeves snapped it open, scanned it once, then looked up at the digital clock above the security desk, 7:45 a.m. Then at the monitor showing me walking through the north metal detectors at that exact time. "You're sloppy, Dale," he said, voice dropping to a terrifying calm. He turned the warrant so the deputies could see. This was signed at 8 a.m. sharp. But my building's logs show Julianne entered federal custody at 7:45. Unless she can teleport, she couldn't have stolen jewelry from your house this morning. The lobby went dead silent. The deputies looked at each other, then at Dale, realization dawning. They weren't making an arrest. They were aiding a kidnapping. "It's a typo," Dale shouted, spit flying. "She stole it last night." "The warrant says this morning," Reeves countered. "If you lied on a sworn affidavit to get this signed, that's perjury. If you're trying to abduct a federal witness on falsified charges, that's kidnapping." He signaled to his officers. "Release her. Now." They let go of my arms like I was on fire. I scrambled backward, putting 10 feet of space between me and the man who stole my life. Dale stood alone in the center of the lobby, face purple with rage. He saw his deputies backing away. He saw Reeves staring him down with cold contempt. He saw me, standing tall, rubbing my bruised wrists, no longer the girl he could break with a word. He knew he couldn't talk his way out. His authority meant nothing here. And that's when he snapped. "I'm not leaving without her," Dale screamed. His hand flew to his belt, not for his service pistol, he knew that would get him killed, but for his taser. The yellow device gleamed under the lobby lights as he leveled it at Reeves. "Back off! Anyone who interferes gets dropped." He was insane. He was threatening a federal agent in a federal building. But I looked into his eyes, wide, frantic, desperate, and I realized he wasn't trying to arrest me anymore. He knew it was over. He was just trying to survive the next 5 minutes. The guards reacted instantly. 3 Glock 17s snapped up, barrels trained on Dale's chest. "Drop the weapon," Reeves ordered. For a heartbeat, it looked like Dale might force them to shoot him out of spite. Then the madness drained from his face. He wasn't a martyr. He was a coward. He tossed the taser to the marble floor with a clatter and raised his hands. "Fine," he sneered. Then, with a practiced flourish, he reached into his jacket and pulled out another document. "You caught me," he said lightly, almost smug. "The warrant was fake. I knew about the kidnapping. I helped cover it up." He turned to me, smiling like a snake. "I kept you. I hid you. I stole your life." Reeves stepped forward, cuffs in hand. "That's a confession. You're under arrest." Dale laughed. A hollow, ugly sound. "No, I'm not. Check the calendar. The kidnapping happened in 1991. The statute of limitations expired in 2011. You can't touch me for that, and legally? Since Julianne was declared legally incompetent as a minor, I still control her assets." He turned toward the exit. "I'm suing all of you for false imprisonment." Reeves didn't move. "You're right about the criminal statute," he said calmly, stopping Dale mid-step. "But you forgot one rule." Dale frowned. "Which is?" Reeves lifted a thick file stamped "Confidential Civil Forfeiture." "The constructive trust doctrine. Property obtained through fraud doesn't belong to the thief. It's held in trust for the victim." He dropped the file on the bench with a thud. "We traced the ransom payments your accomplices sent, the foster care stipends you pocketed, the investments you made using her stolen identity. Civil fraud against a minor? No statute of limitations." I stepped forward, voice steady for the first time in my life. "You didn't own that money, Dale. You just managed it. For me." Reeves's gaze was ice. "Your assets are frozen. Your house is seized. Your bank accounts are being transferred to the rightful owner." He pointed at me. "It all belongs to Julianne." Dale recoiled, not in fear of prison, but of losing everything. "But I'm the sheriff." "And you laundered money and filed false tax returns for decades," Reeves cut in. "Those clocks are still running." This time, the federal officers moved without hesitation. Dale screamed as the cuffs locked shut. I walked up close, so only he could hear. "You're nothing." Then Reeves slid a paper toward me. "Asset transfer authorization." "Sell it," I said, signing my real name, Julianne Whitmore, for the first time. Just make sure he never goes back. I had nothing left of Elise Carter, but I was finally free. Sunlight flooded the lobby as two figures rushed through the glass doors, elegant, trembling, eyes wide with decades of grief and hope. I didn't need proof. I felt it in my bones, in the echo of my own face, reflected in the woman's eyes. Julianne, she whispered, voice breaking. I'm here. They wrapped their arms around me like they'd spent 30 years learning exactly how to hold me. And for the first time in my life, I was home. If you've ever been told you're too much, or not enough, if you've carried shame that wasn't yours, know this. Some lies are so deep, they feel like truth. But truth always fights its way back to the light. If this story moved you, drop a comment below. Tell me your name and where you're watching from. Like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to remember. You were never the mistake. You were the treasure they tried to hide. And no cage, no lie, no fake name, no stolen identity can keep you from finding your way back to yourself.